Hello, welcome to week 4. We are having a little bit of a technical difficulties over here. Sam's trying to help me. My computer, for some reason, is frozen on my presentation. So we are figuring it out here. Let's see. Sam, is it pulling up for you? In the meantime,
Yes, let
if
me.
anyone has any questions, please ask them for this week. Let me see here. Okay. Does anyone have questions on week 4? I think we had some questions in the app that we were answering today, but I think that they did get answered. And I can. Let's see. Sam's pulling it up here. I
I'm
don't
trying to.
know why my computer is frozen.
This one.
Sorry, everyone. Okay. Yay. Thank you,
Okay, can you
Sam.
see it? Because I can't see anything else.
It just said you started screen sharing, but it's not showing up. Let's see.
Come on.
I think we're close.
Just loading.
Okay. Yep. I'm
Okay.
starting to see it. Okay. So we are in week 4 talking about expectations and timelines moving forward. I think, thank you. I'll just tell you when to switch slides. So, talking through week 4, this is our final week of the Goddess of Gains cohort for those that are not doing momentum. I'm hopeful that all of you end up doing momentum or one-on-one coaching because building muscle is definitely not something that can be done in a month. Right? Our goal with this cohort is to give you all of the education and information and tools so that you feel really confident in building muscle for the rest of your life. And we wanted to set everyone up so that they were able to optimize on nutrition intake as well as understanding what's important on the training side so that you can get as much bang for your buck with building muscle in your training sessions, as well as have a solid understanding of recovery and sleep and how that can really impact your body's ability to put on muscle. So, obviously, some of us, you may have noticed, like you are increasing in strength over this first month of training. That is a pretty good indicator that you're getting stronger. If your lifts are increasing, you're getting stronger, which correlates to hypertrophy, which is essentially building lean tissue, building muscle. So hopefully, you are feeling more confident in your ability to build muscle. You might be feeling a little bit like, okay, how long am I going to do this? What's next? Um, and I just wanted to really like celebrate you for taking this step because I think as women, it's really easy to fall into the trap of just like, I want to be smaller. Yes, maybe I want to see like I want to have a toned body, but like I'm not about to increase my calories to get there. So for those of you that have been brave and decided to do something different than you have done in the past, I am just really proud of you and I acknowledge you for that. And I hope that you're proud of yourself. And my hope is that you can take the knowledge and education that you've gained and just build upon that and continue to see your body transform. And then, more importantly, live a long, healthy, functional life. So that is kind of like the main theme of this week, I would say, is just celebrating your wins. Hopefully, you are noticing some personal bests with your lifts this week, and you can share those with us. And to reiterate, long-term muscle growth, not just short-term wins. So I want to talk about building muscle is not as gratifying in the short term as like losing body fat, right? Like you're not going to step on the scale every morning and like see that trend start to move down. In fact, you might see it come up a little bit in the beginning because as you're lifting weight, your muscles pull in more water. You have a little bit more inflammation as you're eating like you're coming maybe out of a chronic calorie deficit and bringing intake up to maintenance, you have more food in your digestive tract. You have probably more carbohydrates that you're intaking, which is going to equate to more water weight on the scale. Maybe you're supplementing with creatine, which is going to hydrate you and bring water into your cells and your muscles, which is a great thing, but that might equate to more weight on the scale. So it can be a little bit shocking at first. I think a lot of the habits and things that you implement to set yourself up to be as anabolic as possible so that you can build muscle can equate to a short-term increase on the scale, which is usually what scares people off, and they just go right back into old habits. And so at this point, at the 4 week mark, you should start, for those of you that have like pushed through the fear and kept going, you should start to see if you have any water retention or inflammation. That should start to be coming off and like normalizing a little bit at this point. And so hopefully you've been patient. And if you haven't been, now's a good opportunity to kind of come back to that and remind yourself why you're doing this. So if we want to click the next slide, thanks, Sam. Just talking about like muscle growth timeline. So how long does it take to build muscle? Muscle growth is measured in months, not weeks. Visible changes usually take 3 to 6 months, I would say, as far as building muscles goes, sometimes longer. If you have been training for years, like it might take you longer to put on muscle than someone that's new to weightlifting. They're going to have relatively fast progress compared to like me or Sam who've been training for decades. If I put on like a pound of muscle, I'm thrilled, where someone that's new might put on a couple pounds of muscle in half the time. So keeping that in mind and thinking of it like planting seeds. What we've done over the last 4 weeks is prepping us so that we can essentially like prepare the soil and plant the seeds is what we've done over the last month. And now we're going to start to yield results, or just be at the beginning of yielding those results. So keep showing up. And for those of you that are feeling like, I haven't really seen any change happen yet, I promise you, if you stay on this path and continue to focus on training hard, eating enough to fill your body, recovering, in 6 months, you are going to see and feel so much change. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Like realistic gains is a half pound to a pound of muscle per month. I've seen women increase that and like double and even triple that. But most people, that is what you can expect. And that is also with like optimizing in every area. So knowing that if we're eating 70, 50 grams of protein a day, like that's probably not going to get us there. If we're only sleeping 5 hours a night, that's probably not going to get us there. If we are bouncing around and doing a bunch of different training programs, likely not going to get us there. If we are not able to eliminate and let go of like a really high intensity or high volume cardio program, it's going to be a lot harder to put on muscle. So hopefully you can take some of the tools that we've given you over the last 4 weeks and continue to implement those. Maybe you want to increase calories a little bit to like push your body into more of an anabolic state, or maybe you want to lower them a little bit because you're feeling really good and the scale's coming up a little more quickly than you would like, and you want to see if you can be on the low end of your maintenance, and continue to grow. Anything to add there, Autumn or Sam?
I don't think so. I mean, enjoy the pumps while you can.
Heck yeah. Feels good to build.
You're having more sodium, so enjoy those pumps because you won't get them as much necessarily when you're in a deficit. And just,
I
it
can
is
attest
hard.
to that.
Like, I like
I
to
I think
picture
so too.
as, what was
Sorry,
that?
go ahead. I was gonna say, I think it's easy to, like, the more you go into maintenance and back into a deficit and then back into it, it kind of gets funner. You start to notice the gains a little bit easier, you know?
You mean like coming out of a deficit and into a building phase, like cycling that throughout the
Yeah, or go into a little bit of a surplus and then back down to maintenance, and like you just kind of you get the feel of it a little bit better and you
Yeah,
enjoy it more.
you know what to expect at that
Yeah.
point, right? Once you've already done it, it's like your expectations are a little bit, it's better. for
Yeah.
like initially, I like to think of it as like a sculpture. Like first you have to like build the
Mhm.
clay, like put that, and then you have to let it dry, and you have to then once you're ready, you start chiseling it away, and that's when you reveal like what's underneath it, all of it. So it takes a lot. I think personally, being in maintenance or a surplus is a lot harder than being in a
Mhm.
deficit mindset wise.
Yeah, and that's going to vary for everyone. So I think if you're feeling a certain way, it's important to actually look at the data and see like, okay, I might be feeling like I'm just putting on a ton of weight. I'm just so fluffy. Like, look at the data. What are your measurements showing? What are photos showing? What is the scale showing? What are your lifts showing? And also, have you given it time? Have you given it like 1 to 2 months? Because things start to normalize. Like if you've been chronically under eating and then you start to feed your body, you probably will retain like a good amount of water at first. Your body has to acclimate to that. We can go to the next.
Remembering that even when we're in a deficit, like you're still gonna have bad body image days. Like
Oh,
some days you are just gonna feel not great when you know about
yeah,
yourself. So
that's
you
pretty.
kind of sometimes just let those thoughts pass. Like it is what it is. Like I hear them, I see them, but it's not the reality. Like we're no, regardless, we're always gonna have bad body image days. Just there's just that's just as we are as humans, we're hard on ourselves. So
Mhm.
you can't really avoid that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't take a bad body day or even like a bad body week and let that determine my choices. So we can switch to the nutrition side of things. The next slide. So talking about nutrition adjustments, almost. Okay. When and how to adjust your nutrition. So this is a good time to like start to think about that. Really, I would say like more like 6 to 8 weeks is probably more optimal to be making adjustments. But now is where you can start to see, you at least have a little bit of historical data here. You have a month in next week, you'll have a month's worth of data. So signs to maybe make adjustments to nutrition, not gaining strength or seeing performance improvement. So if next week or the following week in your training, as we come onto like week 5 and 6, you feel like you're plateauing or like even feeling worse potentially, if you're feeling excessively fatigued or recovering poorly, if you're not seeing any weight changes over the 6 to 8 weeks when you're trying to grow, then that would be a good indication that we probably want to increase your calorie intake. And so as far as that goes, and this goes back to kind of what Autumn had said, the more familiar you get with coming into a calorie deficit, going into a slight surplus, coming into maintenance, you know and understand that it's usually tweaking things. It's not huge overhauls. And that's why we really want everyone to start in maintenance when they work with us, because if you spend a quarter in maintenance and really optimize health habits, recovery, stress, all of those things that are going to set you up for success. Then, if you want to emphasize building muscle or emphasize losing body fat, it's really easy because you have such a solid foundation there and you're just tweaking things. So, in this case, hopefully you have been pretty consistent and you can look at your data and you can start to make some adjustments based on how you feel, how your body's responding, and these are kind of some of the, biofeedback metrics to go off of when knowing if you should adjust up or adjust down. So increasing calories by 1 to 200 calories per day. See how you feel there. And I wrote for 2 to 3 weeks. I don't mean like continue to increase every day, like increase for 100 to 200 calories, stay there for 2 to 3 weeks, and then reassess. And then ensuring your protein intake is in that 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight is also going to be ideal. So just coming back to that, like what's my intake calorically? What's my intake protein wise? Can I adjust that or optimize that a little bit? Do that for 2 to 3 weeks and then see how I'm continuing to progress. And we can bump to the next one. Okay, then my kids really liked this picture that I chose. They came in when I was working on these slides. And so next, I wanted to address the fluffiness because I've seen some questions on it. Sam's always like so fast to respond, which I love her for. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about this too, because I've seen people ask it. And And I think it's common. Honestly, it's common no matter if you're in a calorie deficit or you're in a surplus. But obviously, you have more days that you feel a little bit fluffy in a surplus or the high end of maintenance than you do in a deficit when you're under eating slightly. So what to do when it happens? First of all, I think just understanding what's going on physiologically is really helpful. So building muscle often involves some water retention. And that is a positive thing. So more glycogen storage in our muscles and a small increase, some usually of body fat to go with when we're building. It's kind of hard to like only build muscle, right? But ideally, we want the majority of what we're building to be muscle. But along with that is going to come some water, is going to come a little bit of body fat. And the things that we have been teaching you over the last month are going to help mitigate that body fat so that that is as low as possible. That's why we wouldn't come from like a calorie deficit into a 15% calorie surplus. We would never advise that, because we want you to be eating as much food as needed to grow and be anabolic, but no more than that, right? Because if we're going above that, it doesn't mean more muscle gain. It usually just means body fat gain. So that's something that we are aware of when we're setting your macros, but I think something to just know that that's inevitable and that's okay. It's not a like huge deal to be putting on a little bit of body fat as we put on muscle. Because we can always move into a calorie deficit and maintain that muscle and lose the body fat. So some tips, if you're feeling a bit fluffy and you want to just like slash your calories down, I recommend not doing that. Stay consistent, avoid cutting calories prematurely. Like we talked about earlier, our bodies are going to, it's a temporary thing. Like that fluffiness is not going to last forever. And we have more glycogen in our muscles, and that brings water as well. Plus, we initially, as we're training harder, we're going to have a little bit of inflammation. If you're feeling sore, then just know you have some inflammation. That's going to add to the weight on the scale. Adjusting your mindset, that the fluffiness is temporary and strength and muscle are the goal. Drinking water is going to be really helpful to help your body like release that added water retention if you are retaining some water. And then also managing stress. The one thing I will say with managing stress, however, it's a lot easier for your body to handle stress when you are fueled than it is when you are in a calorie deficit. So hopefully you're noticing that. I know for sure I noticed that. Coming from a calorie deficit, I know we've had comments on this too in the group, like, oh, all of a sudden I'm not as irritable during the day. All of a sudden I can handle just like more of what my kids throw at me during the day, more work tasks without feeling overwhelmed. I'm sleeping more restfully. I know right now for me in a calorie deficit, I'm kind of getting towards the end of my own calorie deficit. I'm so excited to go back to maintenance because I usually sleep like a baby. And in a calorie deficit, like I'm up very early, and I'm kind of like up throughout the night, and I notice that dysregulation of my sleep, and that's not somewhere I want to be long term. So living in a calorie deficit is not what we want. It should be done very strategically, and hopefully you're starting to notice like you are more resilient to stress when you're fueling your body well, and how nice that feels. And prioritize recovery as well. Like that's something to keep in mind. And if you are noticing some bloating that's happening, I think sometimes when we bring our calorie intake up, we just add like sweets and some of those more calorically dense foods that are not very high volume. If you're noticing that you're feeling really fluffy or bloated or just like kind of blah, look at your diet. Like, what does your intake look like? Maybe you're hitting your calories, but maybe the majority of your food intake is processed foods. Can you add whole foods back in your diet? Can you like make sure if you are eating, if you are supplementing with protein, that's minimal. So those are things to think about too. Like the more processed foods we have, the more supplements we have where we're throwing in maybe like a protein shake, a protein bar, those are gonna impact our digestion more. So keeping that in mind as well, looking at the quality of your food, not just the quantity. We can switch to the next slide. So I think one of the main things that I want to reiterate is that building muscle is a long game. It takes consistency, consistent effort, and also enough food to grow. And if we want to also see fat loss, most of us are going to need to do that in a staged approach. We can recomp. And I think for those that maybe are on the lower end body fat wise and already have some muscle tissue, like recomping is a really good option for you. Sitting at maintenance, really like optimizing on recovery, really pushing training, that's going to be fantastic for most of us to recomp. Like we don't need to do anything aggressive either way. But for those of us that I would say like are under 105 pounds of lean tissue, or even under 100, I would say I would recommend like being in a muscle building phase for 6 months, and really pushing to see how much lean tissue you can put on your frame before you focus on fat loss, because you're going to yield just way bigger results than sitting in maintenance and trying to recomp. It's going to take a lot longer to do that. Would you add anything on that, Sam or Autumn?
Yeah, and I mean, if you know yourself to be like a hard gainer too, like I'm always like, not that it's hard for me to gain muscle, but I have that like just kind of just straight and narrow kind of physique. So for me, it would probably take longer to build your frame and change your frame. So I'd want to stay in maintenance for a lot longer. And just knowing that if I want to recomp, it's probably going to take maybe it get closer to 9 months than 6 months if I want to stay on that
Really?
lower end of maintenance. The lower end of maintenance that you are, probably the longer that it's going to take. So just making sure that you understand the pros and the cons of being towards, the lower end, towards the middle end, towards the higher end. It'll just take a little bit longer. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think hopefully you're starting to know kind of, are you a hard gainer or do you put on muscle easily? If you're a hard gainer, then being on the upper end of maintenance is going to benefit you. Where if you put on muscle easily, maybe have a hard time losing body fat, then probably being on the low end of maintenance is where you want to be. So Sam and I are good examples of kind of like different ends of the spectrum there. I can put on muscle in a slight calorie deficit, but it's also hard for me to lose body fat. I have to go pretty low in my calories, but I don't need to go very high in my calories to put on muscle. So the longer that you train and the more you know your body, the more you'll be able to kind of make those small tweaks over time. But with that being said, like tweaking, not overhauling anything. Just because the scales come up 3 pounds this week does not mean it's going to continue to go up 3 pounds. Like,
you could come through about 3 pounds in a deficit, right?
absolutely. Mine did just a few days ago. Like I shot up 5 pounds and then come down 3 and then come down another 4 and then back up 3. Like it's weekly averages. Please do not ever stress about 1 or 2 high scale readings. They mean you nothing. Like they mean nothing. They mean maybe you ate dinner a little later, maybe you had a high stress day, maybe sleep quality wasn't as good, maybe your food intake was a little bit different, maybe your training was different, maybe it's hormonal. There's just so many things that can impact the daily scale readings that just please, if anything, don't put any emotion into a daily scale reading ever, whether you're in a fat loss phase or a muscle building phase. If that trend is continuing over like 3 weeks, then we can just make some adjustments and we know what to do. It's not magic. It's just data and making adjustments based on the data. So we can move to the next slide. And then with that too, like in this stage, the scale isn't going to give you a lot of excitement. Focus on performance goals, like focus on lifting heavier, focus on how your sleep quality is, focus on your energy levels. And then on the evaluating progress and making changes, like I said earlier, every 6 weeks is kind of a good time to assess. That's also in line with about how long our cycles are with HF Physique. So like every every cycle, every 6 weeks is a good time to look at your history and see like, oh, I've been increasing weight week after week, or ooh, I'm kind of going through the motions. I'm really not like pushing intensity. I'm going to change that in this next 6 week cycle. Look at your body composition. Photos and measurements can go a long ways. And then also assessing your energy and recovery levels, sticking to the plan for 8 to 12 weeks before making major changes. Notice how I didn't say 4 weeks and we are only in week 4. Like this is just like a small blip in the grand scheme of things. This is really just an opportunity for you to learn so that you can set yourself up for success in the weeks and months to come. And then always return to the fundamentals. Consistency is key. You don't need to do some new fad workout plan. You don't need to do some new fad diet. The basics work. They aren't easy all the time. And so I think a lot of times we want to look for some easier hack or some like novel new idea that's really exciting to give us the results that we are looking for. But the basics are what are going to get us there. So it just takes patience and sticking with it. We can move to the next one. All right, addressing concerns. So common questions that, come up in building muscle and that I've seen. Am I eating too much? I think now is a good time to evaluate that. Like if the scale has increased by 2 pounds every week for the last 4 weeks, we probably are in too high of a calorie surplus. Now is kind of where we can look at like what was our weekly average when we started, and now what is our weekly average at? We know a half pound to a pound of muscle can be built in a month. We know we're going to obviously have a little bit of body fat with that. I would say in that like half pound to a pound per week is kind of a good place to be, I think, for focusing on building muscle. So that might put you up 2 pounds right now, or like 1 to 2 pounds right now. And it probably fluctuated higher than that in the beginning. I would think those first 2 weeks, you're going to maybe be up like in that 4 to 5 pound range. And now it should be kind of leveling out closer to like that 2 to 3 pound range. And beyond will just continue to normalize. Would you add anything to that, Sam, on the scale, or Autumn? Or how to know you're eating too much?
I mean, it's just hard. Yeah, I would say if you've gained more than, on average, more than a half a pound to a pound, that's kind of where I like to be.
Yeah.
If it's more than that on average for over the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks, then I would just dial it back a little bit.
Yeah, maybe cut 50 calories to 100 calories. Yep.
And then photos too. Photos are big in measurements. I really like to do that.
Yeah.
My weight fluctuates a ton. I don't know, I hold on to water, I get rid of water, like, I don't know, like a drop of a hat. So for me, photos and measurements tend to be a better assessment.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And I think like if the scale is kind of all over the place, I like to take a waist measurement, and then for me too, like glutes and legs can be really helpful. If I know I want to build my lower body, which is usually the goal for me, then I want to take a measurement at the widest part of my waist and the widest part of my legs, and then the smallest part of my waist. So that kind of helps me, like sometimes maybe I can't see any visual change yet in photos, or the scale is like all over the place. It's hard for me to tell what's happening. Maybe it's up 1 week and then it's down and then it's in the middle and I'm not sure what's going on there. If I see, okay, waist is maintaining, glutes and legs are coming up, I feel pretty dang good that I'm recomping. If waist is coming up a little bit, but glutes and legs are coming up at a higher rate, then I feel pretty good that I'm building muscle, maybe putting on a little bit of body fat. If waist is coming down and glutes and legs are maintaining, then I'm probably a little bit low. Like I'm probably more losing body fat than I am building muscle or recomping. So I might increase calories a little bit. So that kind of helps me. We're like right now in a fat loss phase, my waist is coming down, but so are my legs and glutes. And it's so sad, but I'm like hoping that they're at a slower rate than my waist, right? Where if they're coming down too much, then I want to add more food. So using measurements is very helpful. If you have the budget and convenience of a DEXA scan, that's a great option too. I probably wouldn't get a DEXA scan earlier than 6 weeks. 3 months is kind of a good rule of thumb for assessing progress on a DEXA scan, because although they are like the gold standard of measurements, they're still impacted by water as well. So I would try to kind of use measurements, photos, the scale, your performance in the gym for the kind of during that first 3 months. And then if you want to get a DEXA scan, do that at the 3 month mark. That's a great option to really like look at, okay, how much muscle am I building? Where am I building the muscle? And that's really helpful for training too. Like maybe you want to build more muscle in your upper body and you get a DEXA and you see you are not building muscle in your upper body. It's just in your core. So then you can make some adjustments, like maybe add another training set onto your upper body days and adjust there. So speaking of which, am I lifting heavy enough? So really assessing, like, am I talking between sets? Am I scrolling social media? Am I letting my rest go from 90 seconds to 4 minutes? We've all been guilty of these things, myself included. Am I getting distracted? Am I thinking I'm pushing to failure, but I'm actually not? Sometimes having a training partner can be really helpful for that. You think you're working hard and then you're like looking at maybe what they're lifting or their effort and realize, oh, okay, yeah, no, I got more in the tank here. So that's where we recommend that kind of 1 to 2 RIR rep range for building muscle. And that means reps in reserve. So if I'm doing a back squat, for instance, having like 1 or 2 reps left before I want to drop the barbell off my back. I would recommend even on a compound lift, like a back squat, like maybe even being closer to the 2 RIR from a safety standpoint. But if I'm doing like a lateral dumbbell raise, like I can go to 0, and that's not going to fatigue my body a ton. If I can't get the weight up, it's just like, okay, the dumbbell goes back down, right? From a safety standpoint and a recovery standpoint, that's not going to be as bad as hitting failure on a deadlift, right? That's going to take me out for a couple days, probably from a recovery standpoint. So on any lifts that are multi-joint exercises, like a deadlift, a squat, being on like maybe the 2 to 3 reps in reserve range, pushing intensity, but not hitting failure, where something like a lateral raise or a bicep curl, you can go closer to that 0 or 1 reps in reserve. And if you want to know what that feels like, maybe 1 week, like take a lift to failure, to full failure, and just see like, oh, that's the difference. Usually, if I am trying to hit maybe 1 RIR on a lift, let's say it is a squat, just for like visual sake. Those first 5 to 6 reps, I'm moving pretty smooth. I'm moving really well. Like I feel really good. Reps 7, 8, I'm starting to slow down a little bit, but my form is still really good. I just have to like take a breath before maybe each of those reps. And then reps 9 and 10, I have to pause for probably a second or 2 before the descent. I'm really focused. I'm like getting stuck in the hole just a little bit, but able to make it out and finishing there. Where I know if I do 11 and 12, like I may not make it up. Definitely on 12, I'm not making it up. 11, I might even need like someone's fingers on the bar. So that would be pushing to near failure and what that looks like. If you like, if your last 2 reps are as fast as your first 2, you are not going intense enough. So those are kind of some ways to gauge that. If you ever aren't sure, just send us a video. We can very quickly tell you if you are pushing intensity enough. And then what happens after the cohort? Okay, so for those of you that want to continue, momentum starts on Monday and the rest of the cohort will end on Sunday. So this group will close on Sunday. If you're in momentum, we will load everyone to momentum on Monday and have a new group for that. We will continue with the same habits. We'll probably be kind of making some adjustments to habits and continuing to provide support and education and accountability. It'll be a call every other week and more of like a Q&A style call, like a working call where you can jump on and ask us questions and we can give you feedback specific to you. And Anything to add to that, Sam? We can move to the next slide.
No,
Uh,
I mean, that's it.
Okay. Yes. So hopefully you're feeling really good about the foundation that you've built and you've learned a lot. And hopefully you will continue to go back to the resources that we have given you as well. And there's a lot of information. Every week we sent out like 1 to 5 PDFs. And so take advantage of those, keep those. Hopefully let us know if you have had any wins or you've had any like light bulb moments over this month. It's been so much fun to get to provide education and to hear from you. And we are going to be doing a giveaway at the end of this week. So we'll probably announce the winner like early next week. And we're doing a free strategy call with a coach on the HF team of your choice, as long as they're taking calls right now. And we are going to give that away to one of our members of Goddess of Gains. We just want a before and after, or if you're like, I don't want to do before and after because it's only been a month, then just a photo of you feeling strong. I'm good with too, and a testimonial. So I will send out today a link for you to fill that out and submit a photo to us. And then I'll also send out, for those of you that don't have it, the link for signing up for Momentum to continue for 2 more months. And for those of you that aren't joining Momentum, that want maybe more of an individual approach, an individualized approach to whatever your goals are, if that's to continue building muscle or if you want to pivot for something else, then I highly recommend one-on-one coaching. We are offering 10% off on one-on-one coaching until Monday. That Black Friday sale ends. So you can go on and purchase on the website. If you have any questions about one-on-one coaching, let us know. And for those of you that are continuing with Momentum, we will be doing that for the next 8 weeks, and we can adjust macros kind of as needed and go from there. Any questions on anything or anything?
Are we giving away something in Momentum too? I can't remember.
Yes,
So
we are
those that
going
do
to give
Momentum, you're giving
away.
away.
For those of you that continue with Momentum, we're going to do another giveaway in 8 weeks, and it's going to be for a month of one-on-one coaching with a coach of your choice, or who we pair you with based on availability.
Regardless of if you do the Momentum or sign up for one-on-one, I highly recommend you give this more time. Highly recommend staying in for another 8 weeks as like your goal.
Yeah, for sure.
I just think you'll see the most benefits. You're in it now, so just you might as well keep going. And like Autumn said, it's going to continue to just get easier and easier the more we cycle through each phase. You're in it now. You're in a month in. Just keep going.
Yeah, and I would say like timing wise, we set this up for a reason in November. Are like timing wise, a lot of people, I get it, like you want to feel real good going into summer, you want to look your best. So if I were you and I wanted to build muscle, but also set myself up for summer feeling as ripped as possible, I would probably continue. It's been a month. I would continue December, January, February, at least through February. And I would probably start a calorie deficit in March. So that's December, January, that gives you 3 more months. Like give it at least 4 months. And if I was like not too worried about body fat, I would probably try to give it 6 months and then do a calorie deficit like late spring, like May. So that's what I would
Kind of what I
recommend.
like to do. When I do, I like to just do it because, like I said, I'm a kind of a harder gainer.
Mhm.
So I like to just do one fat loss phase, usually a year, and it's usually towards the middle to the end of spring, going into summer. And
Yeah.
then sometimes maybe a shorter one, like once summer's done, I want to maintain during the summer because it's chaos.
Mhm.
It's easier. So then just the beginning of fall when the kids are back to school, just maybe do another quick short fat loss. And then again, just going back to what we're doing now.
Yep. Yeah, that's how I would structure my year. So taking advantage of like the year and what happens throughout the year, stress wise, schedule wise, all of that, and using that to your advantage for sure. So build the body that you want now. Because also from a like schedule standpoint, I think now's kind of a fun time to be in the gym. In the summer, I'm not as focused on building muscle just because I want to be outside more and I want to be enjoying the nature more, where now I'm like, it's dark, it's cold, I can go lift for an hour. That sounds great. So let us know if you have any questions. As for those of you that aren't continuing, we will go through Sunday and we will announce a winner. I just want to give everyone enough time to submit. So we'll probably give you through Sunday to submit and we'll announce a winner probably on Monday. So I might keep this cohort open through Monday or Tuesday until we just like have time to review everyone's testimonials and then do a winner from there. But if you're in Momentum, you'll see another group show up on Monday as well. So thank you for joining. Have the best Thanksgiving holiday. Take advantage of the extra fuel for your training through next weekend and have the best week ahead. Thanks, everyone.